Okay guys, so here's part 2 of problem set 26 for your multi-step equation worksheet. I have already written on the board the examples that I want to cover for you on the worksheet, which are examples 2, 5, 9, and 17. On number 2, we have 6 equals 1 minus 2n plus 5. So the first thing we want to do is combine your like terms. So the 1 and the 5 becomes 6 minus 2n. 6 equals 6 minus 2n. We then want to put the constants on one side, so we're going to move them to the left, cancel that out, and we're going to end up with 0 equals negative 2n. It's important that you subtract the 6 minus 6 and get 0 so that you will have an actual number on this side. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you end up having nothing over here and a negative 2n here, and a lot of people assume that that is the solution. But for one, you cannot have a solution with a coefficient next to the variable. So go ahead and include your 0. Then you're going to divide by the negative 2. Divide by the negative 2. Remember that anything 0 in the numerator divided by something is always going to be 0. And we have equals n. So this is a valid solution. Moving on to number 5, you'll see something a little bit different that happens. In this problem, we're going to take the 4m and we're going to move it to the right side. We wouldn't want to move the 4m from the right to the left because then you would have both the variables and the numbers on one side. So we're going to say minus 4m. And again, just like we did here where we actually followed through and subtracted, you have to subtract and you get 0m equals negative 4. You actually have to subtract this and leave your variable. We know that anything times 0 equals itself, but in this case, you actually have to go ahead and subtract so that you can have a a coefficient in front of your variable. Then you divide by 0 and divide by 0. Recall that the rule when we discussed on the last part of your video says that you cannot have a number in the numerator divided by 0 in the denominator. We call this undefined. Okay, so moving on to number 9, you see that there is a negative 8 equals negative parentheses x plus 4. Now here is where you're going to use the distributive property in this particular case. So make sure you can get the lighting good here. Okay, so we're going to add a 1, so that creates a coefficient. Remember that anything next to parentheses means multiply, so we're going to multiply negative 1 times x and negative 1 times positive 4. So we're going to say negative 8 equals negative 1 times x and negative 1 times 4. So first, the first term is going to be negative 1x and then negative 4 on the second term. We're then going to do the same thing we did on these problems. We're going to combine the terms. So this is plus 4 plus 4. This is going to be negative 4 equals negative 1x. We're going to solve for the variable by dividing by negative 1. And your answer is going to be 4 equals x. Okay? On the next problem, we want to take the negative 1 and again add a coefficient, and we're going to distribute it into the terms here. And then we're going to take the negative 6 and distribute it to these two terms. So we're going to say, this is a little bit hard here, so let me move that. So we're going to say negative 1 times 1, negative 1 times 7. So this is negative 1 negative times positive is negative 7x. Then we're going to say negative 6 times negative 7, so we're going to distribute it one more time. And distribute it here. And you're going to end up with negative times a negative, positive 42. And then you have negative 6 times negative x is going to be positive 6x. So one more time. That was negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 times 7x is negative 7x. Then you have negative 6 times negative 7 is positive 42, and negative 6 times negative x is positive x, 6x. Then you're going to bring down the 36. And then you're going to combine like terms the way you have. Now, This has several terms on the left side. So we're going to do the exponents, the covariables first. So we have negative 7 and 6. So those belong together. So that's going to be negative 1x. Then you have negative 1 plus 42. So you're going to say 42 minus 1 is a positive 41. This is the bigger number, and you're going to subtract, so it's positive 41. Then you're going to bring down the 36. You're going to put the variables on one side, so we're going to leave this negative 1x on the left side, but we're going to move the negative 41 over here by subtracting. We have to subtract backwards, so 41 minus 36 is going to be negative 5. Then you have to divide by the negative 1 to solve for the x. Divide by negative 1, and your solution is x equals 5. You have a negative 5 over negative 1. The solution is 5. So you can see that you have a few things going on. You have where you're going to end up with a solution of 0, as long as the coefficient isn't 0. Then you have over here, you do have a coefficient that is 0. When you divide by 0, the answer is then undefined. Over here, you had a distributive negative without a coefficient, so we added the 1 first, and then we multiplied it to each term. And we did the same thing on number 17. We had a negative over here and a negative over here, so we distributed by multiplying the negative 1 to these terms and the negative 6 to these terms. We combined our like terms, and then we put the variables on one side, the constants on the other, and we solved for the variable. That is worksheet titled Multi-Step Equations. It is a review of problem set 26. So if you have any questions, let me know.